you know.
Oh, I
It's not my strongest area.
well, you do live in the fierce northern wastelands that are currently frozen and trying to
Yeah, we do
survive
the
chopping wood.
smoke signals, you know.
Well, then again, I live in Belgium, so we have our own set of problems. So there's,
For
you've
sure.
been here, you know what it's like.
Yeah, yeah,
No, just before we started recording, we were talking about that a little bit, and I think that's a something worth mentioning is when I said that, you know, as a teacher, your students are supposed to get better than you. I mean, I think
yeah.
that should be the goal.
Yeah,
You've been training for a long time, as I have, also in multiple systems and styles. So you've seen a lot as well, and where you see that teachers who kind of hoard their knowledge and keep it back. So like, no, 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 don't let the student get too far ahead. Don't let them get too good. It's like,
yeah,
no, because unless your life depends on it, obviously that's a little bit different. If you live in a society
of
where
course.
it's life and death, I get
Yeah,
it.
but we don't live in that kind of world right
Not
now.
right away, hopefully never again, but we'll see.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. But also, I can see quite close to me. I can see people who train for quite long time, and then with this stuff, to me, the way I prefer to have it is like a closer relationship. It gets kind of
Yeah,
personal, which is good. If it's only for grades or certifications or martial arts, yeah, okay, then people can leave and it's like a class, right? But we have some kind of sister brotherhood idea in this. Um, but I can see when it comes, there's nothing wrong with the training, nothing wrong there. Then, on a personal level, it
yeah.
starts. And then I have seen teachers kick out their best students. It's like, what the hell are you doing? You actually you're ruining the future of your line. That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, if I think about it, I guess there are reasons where that's like the only solution. Like there's a lot of stuff going on in the BJJ community right now with like big
Yeah,
names,
yeah,
apparently being unable to keep their hands to themselves with female students and so on, and actually going quite far.
yep. That's another
Yeah,
matter. If there's real
yeah,
reasons, but here it's like fear of not being the
yeah,
daddy.
yep. I, I,
Yep.
I'm like, I guess it's a dynamic that all martial artists, especially people who teach and who are very committed to training very hard and want to get to a certain level, that you go through this dynamic of like at a certain point you're at your physical peak, maybe a little bit later in
Yeah.
life you're both technically more proficient and have experience and strategy and tactics and all that kind of stuff that kind of balances out. But eventually the decline sets in when you get older, where physically you
Of course.
cannot be what you were when you were in your 20s. That's not going to work anymore. And
Yeah.
also you may not have the same endurance anymore, or you may not have the same technical possibilities due to injuries,
Sure.
arthritis, other things, and you can't train as hard as anymore. That is entirely normal, and maybe it's just a matter of accepting that we have a life cycle that begins when you're born and ends when you pass, and that it's okay once you're in your 50s, 60s, or whatever, that you can't keep up with guys in their 20s anymore, and that they oh my god, could physically beat you if it came to actual
Yeah.
fight. It
Yeah.
Yeah, what did you expect? You're not Ares, god of war. That's not you. You're not immortal. It's not going to happen. So maybe that's
No,
the issue.
no. Yeah, and I think also it's nice to have a vehicle like Tai Chi, because it's when it's actually the focus, the essence of that is
Yeah,
change. It is to so it means if you get stuck in your mind, like, yeah, like you're 25, but you're 55, maybe you should try to find other ways to do things, and also experience can speak and help younger
yeah.
students. So that's like mentoring.
What what did draw you? Oh, I'm going to try that again. What drew you towards our style of Tai Chi as opposed to the many other ones?
Um, I have to say, because I At that point, I was doing Kyokushin karate, and I loved it. But it was I'm happy I did it when I was 17, 20 plus. So I did it for 10 years. But I saw a lot of
Mm.
injuries. It was extremely competition focused, which was good. But I also felt it was how to say was too sport orientated. And I could see many of my senior teachers, they were had injuries, quite serious injuries, like joint replacements and stuff, around the age of 40. And to me, it's like, I don't know. Is that the way? Supposed to be some kind of wisdom in this stuff? So I was looking around for other stuff. I still continued to train. And I have to say, it was through a newsletter. I was not looking for Tai Chi at all. I didn't even know what it was. Or, yeah, old, slow, old stuff. But in that newsletter from the karate organization, there was an announcement of
Mm.
Dan coming to Sweden for 7 days. And it was the photo of him. He was standing like this, you know. So if that would have been marketing for basketball, I would have played basketball because it was that guy. That was it. So it was Dan, very much Dan's approach and his kind of talking to me attitude that interested
Yeah.
me. I also had read one article in a martial arts magazine that I couldn't make sense out of it. Tai Chi, self defense. What I didn't know.
I had a similar experience in that I just got to Tai Chi by accident because I was teaching somewhere and the owner of the gym knew that I did martial arts. Like, oh, we have a guy doing Tai Chi here. And I'm like, it's for old people. And it's no, these guys fight. I'm like, huh. So I tried my first class and I got thrown all over the place when we did pushing hands. Like this guy half my size was just dropping me to the ground. I was like, this is nonsense. What is this? So my ego got
It's humbling.
bruised, and then
Yeah,
fortunately I had the good sense to think that, well, maybe I can get better at this as well. And if a small guy can do
yeah,
this to me, what can I, as a bigger guy, do to other people? So I'm like, wow,
yeah,
there's something going on here that has nothing to do with how strong I am. So and I
yeah,
never went back, and that's in '97. Then and I just kept going, and then I met Dan, and well, for the audience, Dan is a little bit of a controversial figure in different ways. He was very outspoken, and he was not one to suffer fools gladly. I think I'm fair in my assessment here. But
yeah,
he was also one of the most impressive martial artists that I've ever seen, and worked with myself. I mean, some of the stuff that Dan did in training, I can't do. I still can't do today. And he did some
yeah,
stuff in my experience, there's maybe a very limited amount of people that could have done that.
yeah,
And it's a big loss for our system, our schools, that Dan is no longer here. But if I look back now over the past about 40 years that I've been training, it turns out that I have an indication, maybe is too strong a word, but let's say I seem to gravitate towards controversial people who think outside of the box. In my teacher, my first kung fu teacher, Jean-Louis Gonzette, then Dan, Bob Orlando was also kind of like doing things. I mean, I remember, I think his first book was maybe 25 years ago or longer still, and it was talking about principles and learning by principles. And back then, I mean, now everybody talks about principle based learning. Back then,
yeah,
no, nobody did.
yeah,
That's unheard of.
yeah,
Back then, there was nobody teaching that way and distilling principles and explaining how they worked and so on. Bob was as far as I know, and as far as I remember, nobody else was doing that. But he was also controversial. A lot of people hated his guts. My experience was very positive with him. Can't say anything negative about him.
yeah, exactly. And I think it's kind of a you get what you earn. You know, it's like but I remember the uh, first time I met Dan. Um, we were easily 60 people in the Swedish camp, and most of the guys were quite seasoned martial artists, many teachers, so barely any beginners. And he was late, so you had us sitting there in this group, this gym, 15 minutes, and people is like, what's happening, you know? Then he comes in with a teacup in his hand, and he paces around us, three paces, and we're like, what? And then it, you know, just disrupting, you know, this machismo energy. And then he stands in front of us, and then he looks at the group and says, "Well, there are not too many geniuses in here." And then he leaves, and people are like, "What?" And then he comes back in and say, "Let's commence." And then I thought, "Wow, this is it." That's the guy, you know.
Um, how come I'm not surprised?
But such a great way, you know, to sometimes to in a learning experience, you need to be thrown out on deep water to leave your comfort zone. Most people won't do that, of course, but he had great ways of doing it. uh, but always with something in
Yeah.
mind.
Well, I mean,
uh,
I'd love to hear yours, but my favorite part of going to his seminars had nothing to do with the training. It would be that he would just walk up to me and start talking about something that seemed completely irrelevant or something, or nothing to do with what he just showed that we should practice. And there was these little tidbits of information about the art, about China, about how what the culture was like, or just stories about, well, there's Yang Luchan, apparently said this, however, in this old scroll that we translated, we could find blah 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 and so on. Or like, well, that's what you're doing here. We call this, 8 feet because this is your feet are positioned wrong and refers to blah blah
yeah,
blah. So, and it was always like these little gems of information, and he had this knack of saying with very very little words, giving you a lot of work to
yeah,
improve. And there was one time during a seminar, I was doing snake creeps down, and he stopped me and he said, "It's not wrong." And you know what that means when Dan says it's not wrong.
yeah,
And he says, "But your form is dead." And then he showed
yeah,
me just do it this way with a certain rhythm, and I'm like,
yeah,
and then he's like, "Go," and he turns around and he's gone.
yeah,
And that took and I knew what to do for the next year. I was like, right,
yeah.
so he just showed me with this one move that there was no rhythm, so my form is not alive, as we like to say. Okay, well, that translates to every single movement that I do in the form. So I have to start from
Indeed.
scratch and look at the form in a completely different way. Okay, how do I breathe life into it? Make it, and which
Yeah,
translates to how do you make it your own? And there's not one way, there's multiple
exactly.
ways, there's variations on variations and so on. I don't know
Yeah.
if there's infinite variations, but I haven't come to the end of it yet. So, and I've been trying.
No, I think it's one life is not enough. I guess, but it's like yeah, you mentioned it. It's like principle
Yeah,
based instead of technique based, um, which is very confusing in the beginning. If you have no other background, it can be very
yeah,
confusing. But as you say, he had this. I think it's a typical. It's kind of a typical Chinese way of teaching. You have the group, and then you have
yeah.
subgroups, and then the teacher is like spotting something, giving a little bit there, giving a little bit there. So that kind of training puts a lot of demand on own responsibility from the student, but it's a very efficient way of training. And that was like quite confusing for me, as I came from Japanese martial arts where everyone did 1,000 kicks, you know, back and forth, like military. Here it was much more individual, and same experience as you have. He okay, you were doing, I was doing some saber form or whatever. He could come up and ask something that didn't have to do with the training, you know. So what do you think about this, or how maybe just throw a bone at you, you know? So it's many times it left a question mark. It's like, okay. So it's a certain way of teaching,
Well,
definitely.
when I was um, I'd been training for a while, not that long, but for a little while with my teacher here in Belgium, and I figured out that I am going to stop with the hardstyle kung fu that I'm teaching. I'm going to switch for similar reasons as you, because and suddenly I found a system that makes a lot of sense, that is more
Mm.
coherent, that has the very interesting dynamic that you can mix and match techniques almost in any way you like. You, if it works, if you can mix, parry and punch with, of I don't know, beginning style, you can do that. If it doesn't work for you,
Yeah,
that's also good. You don't have to, but you can. So you have a lot of freedom, despite there being a lot of information on how you should do these techniques correctly. So that I found that very very interesting, and I decided like, okay, I am switching. So I asked my teacher, would it be okay if I teach? He says, ask Dan. So we organized a seminar, and my teacher had told Dan. So and then we're doing the seminar, and after a while we it says, okay, we do Fuyang, and Dan came up to me, let's do Fuyang. And then he starts asking me, so you want to teach why and this and that. So we have this whole conversation. Have you done Fuyang with Dan in the past? So he was
no, no,
putting, his hands on
yeah,
me,
yeah,
and typically, you push them down, you slide down, and he was bouncing his whole weight 3 times into me on the way down. So I was like, "Ugh," getting crushed. Now I didn't fall, I didn't fall, so I'd been training really hard, and I managed to do okay, I guess. And then afterwards, he said, "It's okay, you can teach." So, and and he was like, it looked like he did absolutely zero effort to develop that kind of
yeah,
force. And then same thing
yeah,
when we did freestyle pushing hands, it was like a slow motion tsunami wave when he pushed. And
yeah.
whatever I tried to adjust, it didn't work. To this day, I can't
No,
replicate that.
I felt that wave kind of movement, very
Yeah,
heavy, extremely heavy. It's even if you see it,
it
you
it
know
doesn't
it's
look like
coming.
it.
No,
I've
no, no. That's I have that. I have the same experience.
I've
Yeah,
one of the open mats that I did. So open mat for the audience is where we do pushing hands, freestyle pushing hands, like the competitive format, and we anybody can show up and join us. It's free training in the sense that it's everyone. I am the master of ceremony. I say this is what we're going to do now, and then we do the next variation. But it's competition type, but there's nothing to win. So there's no real nor medals, no money, nothing. Just different partners training. And then this karate guy show up who was like making me look small, and
right.
and I was just pushing him all over the place, and he didn't understand, like, why am I always falling and losing my balance? I don't get this.
Yeah,
And then he worked with one of my students who was about half his size, and he broke his balance as well. He's like, what is going on here? I'm like, dude, don't worry, I have been where you are. It is okay.
yeah.
Just don't
It's
don't take it personally. It's not you. It's very alien to what you've done before, but you can learn
yeah.
this. Just give yourself time, and it's going to be okay. But a lot of people see the pushing hands and go, "Ah, that's bullshit. That's nonsense." Like, do you think pummeling in wrestling is bullshit? Do you think, like, arm drags that BJJ guys are doing now all over the place, that that's bullshit? Do you think hand fighting is bullshit? It's like
Yeah, yeah,
we just do it in a different manner for different reasons.
yeah,
It.
yeah. And I mean, most martial arts have methods like
Yeah,
drills. Drills supposed to build skills, right? So it depends on what you fill the
yeah,
drill with. If you try to squeeze out the juice from it. You will benefit from it. But also, what is not beneficial is if you treat a drill like competition, because then there's no
Yep.
drill, right? So as long as we know what we are doing and why we do it, there is no issues, right? There are no issues. But I felt, coming from the karate world, just like you, I was pushed around, and immediately I wanted to punch, so so I had to let go of that. But it's like all these small neuromotor tonal things that I thought I did not. It's a part of your behavior, of your normal state, and that, maybe to me, I sometimes I think Tai Chi is a washing machine. Like, you clean your movements, you
I
you
see what you
clean
mean.
your posture, and it's not only, of course, in training, because it spills over to the rest of my life, but it's if it's normal to have the shoulders here, okay, I'm relaxed, but I can relax
Yeah.
more. Okay, that was unnecessary. So all these small glitches. I think Tai Chi, because that's why I was pushed over. I tensed up, right, instead of letting go and going with it. And that takes some. It's bloody frustrating in the beginning.
Oh yeah, I'm same. I mean, it start with basic stuff, like the way I would learn to do a front stance was with a vertical spine, and all of a sudden I have to lean
Yeah,
forward. That was extremely uncomfortable. The weight
yeah,
distribution, so fully on one leg or the other, front stance, back stance
yeah,
was radically different, and that took a long time for me to fully adjust to. Now it's to the point where it's instinctive, it's natural, and it it kind of comes over that a lot of people think like, yeah, I mean, you can just do whatever and just mix systems and grab something from this system, put it in here and this and that. I'm like, well, you can. Obviously, can it work? Yes, it can work. But if you look at the way, um, if you see somebody who specializes in a system, they tend to move
mm,
differently from people in
yeah,
another system. Look at a boxer, look at a wrestler and watch them walk.
yeah,
It's going to be
yeah,
very different. The way they move. Look
yeah,
at a Muay Thai guy and then look at a karate guy. They both punch and
yeah,
kick, but they have
yeah,
very very different body dynamics. And yes, there are obviously similarities. Yeah, I mean, two arms, two legs, and so on. However,
for sure.
I like the Chinese expression "shen fa," the body method, the way you
Yeah,
use your body
yeah,
as a specific
yeah,
system which has certain principles, certain ways of doing things. Which the Chinese
yeah,
traditional martial arts, they're always talking about, yeah, this is how you use your back, this is how you do this is how you do that. And then there's overlap, but there's styles that do it very differently. Nothing wrong with that.
yeah,
My experience is that when you look at Tai Chi, I find it takes a long time to, like you say, really integrate that into your movement so that you indeed don't hunch your shoulders. I mean, you teach beginners. I have beginners in my class as well. We do single whip and they're standing like this. I'm like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
stay here. It's
Sure.
awesome. Don't move anything. Just pull your shoulders as high as you can against your ears and now drop them as low as
Yeah,
you can. Notice the difference? Oh, wow, that's
yeah,
so much easier. Like, there you go. Now do this every single time.
yeah. Yeah, but it's like, I think, usually I teach like, I show something, then people try it, and then we can
Yeah.
instruct, and that circle rolls. Because if you start to instruct immediately, you don't have a reference point. And what struck me, I guess same thing as you, coming from other style, was the level of theory, theoretical constructs and ideas, uh, and sometimes, not too seldom, without any empiric experience behind it. That was like, what the hell? It's like, I remember one open seminar in France with loads of style. It's Jean Contre, um, meeting. Uh, And I had one guy coming up to me. He knew the tradition I came from, and he wanted to ask about punching, about striking. And he's like, Tai Chi striking, how is it, right? Because you're not supposed to tense your fist. I'm like, what? What do you mean? Yeah, but because my teacher says that the hand should be open when you hit. I'm like, what? I'm like, is he joking? It's like, but he was in this mind, this idea, and that was a bit shocking to me, coming from stuff where you break baseball bats with your shin, and you condition yourself. Uh, so it depends on. I now these days I really like the theoretical
Yeah.
parts, but if you don't have the experience to back it up, to decode it, like Dan did, it can be a very devious and dangerous thing.
Yeah, I did a video and a blog post about that a while ago about how to make a proper fist, and the title is kind of a joke because there's different ways, and I only show a few. But at one point, I showed just a bullshit fist, which is the shaka fist. Like I'm punching like this on the heavy bag,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
in my opinion, I could be wrong, but I don't think there's ever a single boxing or kickboxing or karate coach that's going to say punch people like this with your thumb and pinky finger sticking out. And I'm hitting on the heavy bag really, really hard. And I just did it recently again for my students. Look, can I punch like this and hit hard? Yes. Is it a good idea? No, it's a bad
no,
idea. So just because you can do something doesn't mean it's a good idea. Now, I know
yeah,
why I can do this. Why? Well, because I've been training for a very long time, and it has to do with how I hold my
yeah,
hand. But that doesn't
yeah,
start here. It starts here, and then it evolves. It evolves from here to this kind of stuff, and to this kind of stuff, and then to the hollow fist. And by the time I get to Bo Orlando's hollow fist, yeah,
yeah,
now I don't have to squeeze as hard as it anymore, and then I can start opening it up and just hit like this with a hook hand,
yeah,
and I can do
yeah,
bullshit like this as well. But I would never
yeah.
teach somebody to do that. It's just a
That's not the place
it's
to start.
proof of concept. I was like, look, here's a
Yeah,
concept. Can you
exactly.
hit like this?
Yeah,
Yes. Can you do high kicks in the street for self-defense? Yes. Is it a good idea for everybody? No. I used to be able to do it. Didn't need a warm-up. Now, not so much.
yeah.
Now it's gone.
No, no, and I think it's like to learn proper fundamentals, then we're able to do a lot of
Yeah.
stuff. But we cannot invert that triangle. It's like it's weird. But yeah,
Do you remember the DVD that Dan did of the short form and the advanced short form? That's many years ago. And
yeah,
he showed a
yeah,
version of the short form that I hadn't seen before. Like in single whip, he would first, draw his leg in and then almost like
yeah,
kick it
yeah,
out, which I've never seen him do
yeah,
before. And then you
yeah,
would see like a few years later, people all of a sudden doing it that way. And I'm like,
yeah, yeah,
okay, you learned from the DVD form. You didn't learn from a teacher. Because to my knowledge, there wasn't anybody teaching it like that, other than Dan showing it
no,
on that DVD. Now, I never got around to asking him why he did it that way. But I'm like, yeah, just because he can doesn't mean you should. There's a
yeah,
process that you have to go through, and then we get back to Taoism and Tai Chi. It's change. Change also means transformation, which is the yin yang cycle, which is basically you transform yourself through your training into somebody else. Like you said, physically speaking, the way you hold your shoulders, the way you hold your spine, the way your body coordinates.
yeah,
Mentally speaking, you're supposed to get hopefully a little bit of wisdom, not to get in fights with everybody, and philosophy and many other aspects of who you are is going to
yeah,
change. That's that's what it's supposed to be.
yeah. And there's a level of freedom, but to understand what that level becomes the bastard love child of Tai Chi, uh, you need
That's a
some
good
years.
expression.
It is, and it's the same thing to me with people who invent their own systems when they have not really done the groundwork. It's too early. But I think this pulling up the leg thing, he did it in other parts as well. And to me, the context we were in then when he started to do it was he was coaching a lot of people to
Mm.
compete. So you wanted to add some extra, visible stuff. So it's a competition variation
Yep.
maybe, but it doesn't mean that it exists. It's like I had a colleague who trained young style from the Tung lineage, I think, and they in a sword form they had three jumps backwards. Uh, and the master died. They went to China to speak to the widow, who's also a teacher. So they paid respects, went to the house, had a tea, and the last chat with this widow, and she's like, okay, so if you have any questions, and these are experienced teachers from Europe, if you have any questions we need to discuss, you just, I'm here now. And these jumps, you know, it was an awkward thing. No one wanted to ask that question. But then someone said, "Oh, we have one question, one more question. Is these jumps in the sword form? Well, what are those? What's the application?" And she said, "What? I'm not sure what you mean. Can you please show?" And the guy shows the move and jumps back, and she says, "Oh, but that's our living room was so small." So it's like, if you don't know, if you think it's like the truth is the way you do it, but there are
Yep.
principles we should stick to in order to make it in a correct way.
In during one of the seminars that Dan gave in my school, there was a pause, and he was open to questions. So he paused the group so everybody could get a break, drink some water. As everybody sits down, like, okay, are there any questions? And nobody there speak. So he starts talking about the secret Tai Chi sign. I'm guessing you know that story.
Yeah,
Where basically one of his students later, I think, wrote about this secret Tai Chi sign, and it's basically something like this, and
yeah,
and that the whole thing that he wrote about was didn't make any sense. Why? Well, because Dan used to teach in I think it's the sports center, where next door there was like the aerobics class going on with a lot of music, and instead of him yelling at the end of class dismissed, he would do the timeout sign, and
yeah,
that never, I guess, never explained it. And then the human brain does not like a void, so it fills it with something, and then this whole
yeah,
theory gets developed out of nowhere. And I've seen this as well with in other things as well, and with other people, and whether it's martial arts or something else, where if it's not properly explained, or like with an author, when they go on and on and on about why were the curtains blue, and what it symbolizes, yada yada yada, and then the author says, no, they're just blue. That's the only thing that I saw in my head.
yeah. It's just the way it is.
And there
Yeah,
was I think it was Steve Perry who told that story, that a young man has to write an essay about Stranger in a Strange Land by Heinlein, and one of the questions he has to answer from the teacher is, why did he write it? And he writes for the money, and he gets a bad grade, and he's like, what the hell? What happened?
yeah,
What turns out is that that boy's dad was friends with Heinlein, and he had just asked Heinlein, who, when he came over to his dad's place, is like, why did you write it? I said, for the money. and like, and the teacher was like, no, no, he wrote about the feeling of the anxiety of yada yada yada. This whole theoretical explanation, and it's like, no, no, not at all. And that's who's the source? The author himself. Why? In my
yeah, yeah.
living room.
Sometimes it's very, very
Yeah.
simple.
And this is true with many things. I've written a lot on my blog over the years. I've written millions of words. I know what I meant. Well, so I
Yeah,
forget nowadays because there's so much stuff there that I have to like remind
yeah,
myself, like, why did I write that? But like, if right now this kind of sickness that the modern times have, it's where people know, they claim to know what you think, this is what's going through your
Yeah.
head, whether it's
Yeah.
somebody in politics, whether it's somebody in an actor who does a role, or somebody says something in an interview. Yeah, but this is what he meant. You don't know what he meant. You can't read thoughts.
No, you don't know. I had an interesting experience. I had a student who is a professional author, quite famous in Scandinavia. He's a Finnish Swede. Um, and he came to me when he was 50 and asked if I could coach him to get the gold medal in the European Championship in pushing hands. And he's stubborn. He wants to train. He's ambitious. And we called him the man without a void because you couldn't move him. It was impossible. Um, so I said, yeah, I probably can do that with you. So we went for 1 year, and he wrote a book about this year. That book was not only about Tai Chi, the training, but he kind of interweaved a lot of things to it. But of course, I'm in that book. Um, and it's interesting. I remember lessons and stuff we did with the coaching, with the training. But when I read, his understanding is not sometimes what I meant. It turned out pretty well anyway. He took silver. But that was a good. It's like you think you're so bloody clear, you know. But things are, you don't know where they land.
No, there's. I've told this to my students many times, and I've looked for it and I can't find it. And I think it's on his first Facebook account that Dan had, because there was a problem with it. I think it was hacked or something, and he started a second one. And I think it's on his first one. And there's a picture that somebody took of him, like with his arms crossed and looking kind of down as he's walking during a seminar, during one of his seminars among his students. And he shared that picture. Underneath, he wrote the quote, "It's always the same thing. They never do what I tell them."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember
And
that.
I laughed so hard because it's true. I mean, I've had it so many times when I tell students, like, do this, and and they can't do it. I simplify it more. Okay, only do this.
Yeah,
Doesn't work. Simplifying even more. Just lift your left hand and then just lift the right one. And doesn't have to do
yeah,
with not knowing left or right. It's just that you have to be
yeah,
coachable. You have to be trainable. And I've discussed this with one of my senior students recently. Is that it seems to be maybe a Belgian thing. Now I'm going to ask you, because you teach all over the world. Maybe it's more of a 2020s thing. Is that people are more difficult to teach, in the sense that they're like, I just showed them something. Like, okay, this is how you do it, and immediately like, yeah, but can't you do this instead? Like, yes, you could,
yeah,
this and that, or okay. And I try to explain why, and then they do it for a little while, and then a little bit later, somebody said like, if somebody punched me, I would just do this. I'm like, it's not wrong. I'm
exactly.
not saying it's wrong, but that's not what we're doing right now. So, how about if you come to my class or seminar and I'm trying to teach you something, why would you do something else? If I go to, oh, I don't know, a cooking class, I'm not going, and it's on Chinese food. I'm like, I really like Italian food. I make a really good lasagna. Like, everybody's going to be
Yeah,
like, what are you
yeah.
talking about?
Good for you. No, no, I agree. I think it's. I don't think it's a Belgian
Okay,
thing. I think it's. I don't know what generation it is, but I don't know. It's like a monkey mind thing, right? Where you're. I think there's a deeper level going in here actually with this kind of dopamine. Not be. I mean, my son is 15 years old, and he's not he's not especially much online, but I can see when he reads books, it's difficult to
yeah,
focus. He gets tired, this kind of short attention span thing, and I think that plays into this actually. Okay, okay, so I tried this 5 times. Now I want to do this. It's like a clown,
yeah,
instead of just when you, it sounds boring, but it's not. it's from when things starts to become boring. That's where the fucking magic
Yeah.
starts to happen. If it doesn't, you know, like I usually say this: if you train until you're totally sick of it, and then you
Yeah.
continue to train, that's where you it becomes
Yeah.
yours, you know. And I think this is this behavior you're mentioning is like that. Yeah, but if you punch, like I can do that too, and or I can run away, or I can make a funny face. It's like it's irrelevant because we're trying to achieve something training this stuff
Yeah.
now.
I often tell my students now when this kind of stuff happens, I says, look, if I go to my teacher's class right now, he's going to correct something. There's bound to be something that needs correcting. So that's normal.
Yeah,
That's how it works. We're not a machine. You can be programmed to do the move perfectly every single time. So that's normal. No, so let's say that we're doing forms practice. Let's say we're doing the hand form in his class. Typically, we would do it together, and then he says, "Okay, do it again." And he starts looking at what people are doing, and he walks over and he corrects you, like Dan used to do, and so on. And he will give me a correction. No matter how much longer that we will be doing the forms, that is working with other people, I will do nothing but that correction for maybe 5, 10, whatever minutes straight. And I'll just do
yeah,
it over and over and over. And then maybe I'll do the move just before and then get to that move and then the move right after. So I have 3 moves to work. And then I do it again a few times, only that move. And then I maybe do a short sequence of 5 to 6 moves with the corrected one in the middle. So you do it within context. But I will not just say like, oh, okay, and then just keep going with the form. No,
no, you want to get it into your
you have to
system.
correct it. Correction is more
Yeah,
difficult than learning. So
yeah,
you
definitely.
have to do a lot of work, and we all need correction. It's never going to be perfect.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, it's right. I think now most places I go to, people are our age, so um, and they are also into the game. They train the style. They have some experience, but it's like when we have newcomers who are younger. Um, for sure, that there is it's like a tendency to train a couple of times and then just okay, what happens now, but and not keep on
Yeah,
doing it, you know. So there's something there, and I think that's a general thing in society
yeah.
actually.
Sadly
You
so.
don't have
Let's switch
yeah,
topics a little bit. How did you get interested
yeah,
into Kuntao?
mm, yeah. It's it was a weird thing when I started to train with Dan. I trained with him for 7 days at this camp in Sweden, and at that time chasing the wisdom in martial arts. I have saved up money to go to Asia. So I was planning actually to go to Japan to find this wisdom within the style I was then practicing, the karate style. And I kind of me and Michael, my first training partner, whom you threw out in the
I'm sorry.
in the competition. Michael is a huge guy. Uh, Nevertheless, I saw him flying.
I had a good day then.
He, I think he had to. But anyway, um, it's weird sometimes. It's like I had this idea going to Japan, train hard as hell, and then make a stopover in Malaysia. I I didn't know anything about Malaysia. It's just I don't know where it comes from. Uh, Never mind, that's the idea. Until I meet Dan for these 7 days. At the second day, I'm like, this is like the hand in the glove for me. I want to do this style. I don't want to go to Japan. I find myself asking him. I don't know the man, and why should he bother about me? You know. So I'm asking him, do yeah, I really like this, but do you know anyone in Malaysia? I'm like, I'm like, what did I say? And he says, "Yeah, actually, I do. Come here, sit with me, and we talk." I'm like, "Okay." So all of a sudden, he tells me to write to this old teacher in the under the uncle Cheng Wing Kwong. His name was Long Wei Tek. So that was my teacher in Malaysia. And write to him. It sounds ridiculous, but it was before internet, so you had to write letters. Uh, um, so anyway, long story short, I go there. I stay for about 2 years to train with the Wu style family. So I was exposed early on to a lot of Wu style, which of course is in the lineage, but we're the good black sheep of the Wu family. I like it. I like it a lot. And in Malaysia, I was also exposed a little bit to Kuntao. I saw some stuff, but it was a bit inaccessible to me at that time. Also, I had like kind of full on with the Tai Chi stuff. So it was not until I went back home to back to Sweden, and we shared a training facility with a Silat and Kuntao group, and a guy, very very skilled guy called Jimmy Boharfa, who had trained with Uncle Bill, Willem de Toars. And I had a training T-shirt that said Malaysia, and he's like, "Well, have you been there?" He had been there, and then we started, and then we shared some stuff, and I was so impressed by his skills, extremely good. He's to me, he's the most precise person I ever saw in martial arts. He's like a surgeon. It's a bit scary actually. But then he phoned me one time. You need to come to Stockholm because Uncle is here, and you need to feel him out. You need to feel him out. And I went, and then we got invited. The Tai Chi guys, many of our in our lineage, went to Uncle's seminars, and that's how we also took Jimmy over a few times to cross train. And Uncle was super cool. He's have you met
No,
him? No, but Bob trained for
Bob.
Uncle.
Yeah, Uncle Bill was Bob's main Kuntao teacher for many
Yeah,
years.
yeah. And Uncle told a lot of, I know, controversial stuff, but Uncle always said good things about Bob.
Let me put it this way.
Always.
I mean, because I talked to Bob with Bob about this several times, and he said, no matter what happened, when you went to Bob's school, the picture of Uncle Bill was there, very
Yeah,
prominently. It's like
yeah,
this is my teacher,
yeah,
and Bob
yeah,
maintained that as far as I know until he passed.
yeah. No, I have huge respect for that. And then the others, it's like we can release that. But he, I mean, with Uncle Bill, the man is the style. uh, and he's like just this enigma of things. Uh, and I'm so happy to have met someone who trained for that amount of years with that density. The positioning is still at old age and hitting hard as fuck. It's like, and then shifting to super soft. But he's like, I have a colleague from Italy. He went to one of the seminars, and he was asking like, so are you what kind of bagua did you train? And Uncle said, well, we were in a kitchen, so maybe it's kitchen bagua. This is the way he was thinking. It's not, and to be honest, I think this is the way it was originally, way back. There was not so many styles and stuff. It's like you met and you trained.
It's very different. I
Yeah,
mean, from because I started with judo and jiu-jitsu, so Japanese styles, and you know what it's like. It's very regimented. It's a lot of etiquette. It's very
yeah,
structured,
yeah,
and the belt system was there. And I was going to my archives, and I found just the requirements for the different belts for jiu-jitsu again,
yeah,
like the techniques that you need to know and so on. To this day, that is in many karate styles very much so. Chinese styles, not at all. It's very different,
exactly.
and in Indonesia, it's very different as well. The, I know it exists. There's also schools or systems where they introduce belts or sashes or a grading system like that. But traditionally speaking, that wasn't really the
No,
case at
not that
all.
much.
Very
No.
informal. I mean,
Yeah.
Dan would show up in whatever he was wearing that day. He didn't put on his,
Yeah.
like he would say, silk pajamas. And I've seen that with other teachers from China, Indonesia as well, that they just show up with wearing shorts and flip flops and a t-shirt, whatever. There's
Yeah.
there's ones out there that have uniforms and so on, but many is like no. And where do we train?
No, no, and
Wherever.
that was the very confusing thing coming from such an organized system. So when I went to Malaysia the first time, I went up to this rooftop. We also trained on a rooftop, and there were like, I don't know, 30 people there. Some women waving some swords, some guys doing some pad work, and some people drinking tea. And I'm standing there waiting. What is this? And my teacher says, "What? Well, training started. What are you doing?" I'm like, "What? What?" So it's super
Yeah.
confusing. But like we talked about initially, it's a very efficient way of teaching if everyone takes their responsibility for their own time there. But it is informal in one way, which also makes it more
Yeah.
personal, I think.
Well,
Yeah.
I remember talking with Dan about that once, and one of the things he said is that look, we have to accept that here in Europe, in our case, we are doing a Western interpretation of a very Chinese art. Not just
Yep.
the art and the concepts and the language are different, but also the way of teaching. And it says that the teaching traditionally was much more like basically you go to your teacher and you spend as much time as possible with him, and eventually you will learn everything that way.
Yeah.
Eventually, you get to see a lot, but you do have to spend that time because he also has to get to know you, trust you, and so on. That comes back to our baishi, in and outside the door. Um,
Yeah.
and in that regard, it works really well. The other aspect of that is that you and I will have a very different experience from Dan. And
Yep.
somebody who only met Dan like the last years of his life and maybe 20 years ago will, and maybe just train with him for 1 year, will have a vastly different experience because he
Yeah.
changed as well the way he would teach, what he would show, and so on.
Indeed.
So it's
Indeed.
where are you in the evolution of the teacher is also a big thing because
Yeah.
I'm sure it's the same for you. I don't teach anywhere close to how I would teach 20, 30 years ago.
No, no. That would be, I think that would be a bit pathological, you know, because it's not authentic. We change, and also, for example, when Dan was into the sword, it was about that. You're part of a process, and I think one of the big work he did was to systemize the system, so to speak, because traditionally it's a bit chaotic. We do a little bit here, and then we do that, but it's difficult to get a grasp on what is the system
Yeah.
actually. And also, as you say, some students will only get that, and some people will get that. So to have that body of knowledge in a systemized way, like these 5 pillars that we have, it's an immense amount of work uh, he did in systemizing it,
Yep.
and that we should be very grateful for.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that when I mean, you see it also within the teachers of our system, regardless of who they are or where they are, how much they train with that or not, we all teach different. I mean, your short form looks different from mine, from Dan's,
Yeah.
from the other guy, from our students, and that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be yours.
Yeah.
Now, I always like what my teacher said is that look, you can you have to make it your own. That's true, but you should have a standard. Like there should be some standard.
Mm.
Like this is how we do single whip. This is how we do flying oblique and so on. But you can deviate from the standard as long as you can return to it. So you can make it very much your own thing. Like we talked about the in single whip using the left leg that way.
Yeah.
You can do that. But but that shouldn't necessarily be the standard if it's there for demonstration purposes and so on. So
Yeah,
then the question is, well, what is the standard? Well, you're going to have to develop one that is
yeah,
hopefully close to what is the purpose of that movement that you're doing and so on, and then you should then branch out and work on many different variations, see how that works, because that is part of the refining process, where you make the art your own and where you develop all the nuances and so on that are there to be
yeah,
found, as opposed to doing the exact same form in the exact same way as the first time you learned it.
yeah. No, it's not like a machine. It is a living art, really. But my teacher in Malaysia said one thing to me, and at that time I was 28, 27, 28, and he was 80. And of course, the Wu style traditionally also is very small frame, so much more smaller frame than we do. But he also said, "Do not copy me. Don't copy me. I'm old, and I will show you." He said, "Films and photos of me when I was your age." And he did, and he was not small frame. So I think this is actually what the original sin in Tai Chi still you have from 1968 or something, university students going over to Taiwan, learning from these wise old men and women in a park, but they are old. And these guys who learn are 20. And in Chinese teaching, there's not a concept of
Yeah,
transparency like that. So you think you should copy that. So like Mr. Long told me, if you copy me, you copy an old 80-year-old man, and you will not be able to do it when you're 80. you know. So that's it's a good advice actually.
I think we
It's easy to imitate, but you don't know what you imitate
and that brings
and
us
why.
back to what I mentioned earlier about this transformation process that you have to go through to get
Yeah,
to a certain level of skill and experience. And in many styles, that means that you have to go through some rigorous hard training, physical training, before you can actually get to other things that then supposedly are internal or soft or advanced, however you want to
yeah,
call it. If you
yeah,
don't, if you skip that phase and you want to get straight to that part, most people can't, or it works until up until to a point, but then it falls apart when it starts getting pressure tested a little bit harder. Why? Because it's not held up by this really solid foundation, and you see this in many arts. I mean, this is the example I always give. But Morihei Ueshiba, the founder of Aikido, when he was younger, he was very physically strong, and he apparently
yeah,
had brutal training methods, very physical. It was
yeah,
only much later in life when his Aikido became all about love and so on, and had to do with religion and other reasons. But he went through this phase of being able to do very, very physical, demanding stuff, and it was very harsh with his students,
yeah.
really rough. And then later on, it was a lot more about softness and so on. But he didn't get there by accident. I mean,
No, no, and I think if you like, I usually pedagogically I use a model I like, which is a painting of a Zen monk called Sengai. It's called the universe. So it's a square, a triangle, and a circle, and they touch each other. So, and that's everything, right? The earth is square, is material, and you have the circle is like heaven, the ethereal stuff, the what you cannot grasp, and then it's us in the middle, or it is forms, and then the circle is self-defense or free fighting, and then you have methods or pushing hands drills or whatever. But it's like what are we doing now? If we do self-defense as we do forms, there's a
yeah,
problem. You can extract things, but as long as we can, if you are a lot in the square in the beginning, conditioning, strong fundamental body, you know, high integrity of joints and everything. Maybe at the end of your career, you want to do more flowing things, and that's what I think what happened with Ueshiba. It's just that most people is that's the only thing they know of him. When he's going, and people fly all over the place. So it's like sometimes we see something which maybe is a training method for something that we don't know what it is. Uh, but I totally agree. Tai Chi is really, there's no mumbo jumbo in it. It's like joint alignment. It's super bodily stuff. But if you combine all these things, then we can do stuff that we couldn't do, yeah, otherwise.
Well,
From
I have that now, but I have a few new people in my Tai Chi class, and we do freestyle pushing hands, so fixed step. So for the audience, that you're standing, in a similar lead, and then you want to push or pull the other person so that they break their balance, that they take a step or they fall.
Yeah,
And obviously, with new students, they don't have any experience, so they can't really get far with me. And because they are beginners, I can do stuff that looks like magic. So I just touch them lightly
yeah,
with my fingers and they fall. And it looks like magic. And
yeah,
well, yeah, but what you don't, you see my fingers touching you and you feel that I break your balance. What you don't see is that I've aligned my whole musculoskeletal
exactly.
system so that
Yeah,
that touch is backed up by my entire body weight. So I don't need to
yeah,
push hard. It's just that my entire body weight is backing that up, and by the time I make contact with my fingers, I'm using that. I'm not using my fingers, I'm
yeah,
using my hand. It's everything. Now, does that translate into a fight? Well, no, I would never do it that way. That would be then a palm strike that I would do very, very hard, but hopefully still
yeah,
backed up by the same alignments and coordination. That's the whole thing. But to you, it felt like a magic trick, and it doesn't make any sense because you only see my fingers touching you. It's like, what is going
yeah,
on? How is that? I mean, doesn't make any sense. I'm like, it's okay. You get
yeah.
to
And
learn
it's
this.
like that Dan wave, and it takes a little bit of time. And I don't know. It's like, I don't know if it's true, but I think I think maybe it's a long starting stretch in Tai Chi to kind of get it. It's like you need to build some things up or you need to peel some things
No,
off,
no, it makes sense.
depending on where you come from. All right, but to me, it's all about curiosity. It's like, what? How the hell can he do that to me? And of course, you're frustrated, but it's like, and then slowly, slowly, bit by bit, you get it.
I, I tell students like, look, give it at least 3 months. Start with that
Yeah,
because it's going to take the average person about 3 months to get a little bit of an idea of how this stuff works, and then but
yeah,
actually it takes maybe 3 years before you can actually start to do something decent. Doesn't mean that we are holding you back, and that like I show self defense techniques from the first class, and they have to work right then and there. It's just that it's going to be very crude, very brute force, and you're supposed
yeah,
to evolve beyond that. And then by the time you've been doing this a little bit longer, just like with anything, you'll get better at it. You don't need as much brute strength anymore. It becomes refined and trained strength. The best analogy that we see nowadays, I would say, is Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. It's where you see this, I don't know, 50, 60 kilogram guy taking down this heavyweight and very slowly choking the hell out of him, or making him tap to
yeah,
an armbar.
yeah,
And if you work with a high level BJJ guy, and if you haven't grappled before, and you go to the ground, you try to grab him, this and that, and you think you've got him in this hold, and he's just chilling and relaxing, and like a snake, he just slowly slithers out, and all of a sudden you feel an arm coming around your neck, and you're like, oh, I'm getting choked. What's going on? How did it
yeah,
happen? And you can't explain it,
yeah,
and you think that you're basically just pulling as hard as you can to rip his head off, and he's just relaxing, and then nothing's happening, and you're getting tired, and then all of a sudden he's out. You don't know what happened.
yeah,
It feels
yeah,
like you can't hold him anymore, and then the next thing
yeah,
you know, you have to tap because it's getting dark in front of your eyes.
yeah.
I think that's
Window was shutting down.
the best analogy for people to have, and I think in any art at a high level, I guess it's similar, but Taichi has a bad reputation when it comes to being practical and so on.
Yeah, it does.
Sadly,
Still,
sadly. um,
still.
I think we covered a fair bit of ground. I want to maybe move on over to the Patreon part, which is the second part of Paul and I talking,
Sure.
where my patrons support the podcast and everything that I do, so they get to ask questions of my guests, and we are going to cover those. Before we go, Paul, where can people reach you?
It's easiest on my Patreon page. So just go to patreon.com and then look for my
Yeah, I'll
name.
put a link in the show notes so people can find it.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Good, good. So, Paul, thank you for this. Folks, we are going to hop on over to the Patreon, and if you want to join us there, that's in many ways, that's always the most fun because my patrons have awesome questions.
All right.
All right. Take care,
Wow.
everybody. Bye bye.
Bye.